My dad gave away my custom-made birthday cake to my twin sister. My twin sister always got whatever she wanted. Her name was Alison, and she loved causing trouble and blaming me for it. One time, she saw Mom made this big lasagna and left it in a glass dish on the counter to cool down. Alison hated lasagna, so she knocked the dish to the floor, shattering it into a million pieces. Then she ran and told Dad I did it. Dad dragged me into my room by the arm, which felt like it was gonna rip out of the socket. We learned about sockets at school. Alison told him to take away my Pikachu toy because that was my favorite Pokemon, even though it's not. I just told her it was because I knew she'd tell Dad to take it away all the time. I was crying before Mom came into my room. I told her I would never break the dish, and I knew she spent a lot of time making the lasagna. She hugged me tight and said she knew. Mom knows about all the things I like and don't like, and I liked her cooking. Mom never argued with Dad because when she did, he'd yell so loud the walls shook, and she couldn't ever punish Alison because that made Dad really mad. I hated living with Dad and Alison. I even told Mom for my birthday present I wanted it to be just me and her. On my birthday, Mom baked 2 cakes to celebrate. Alison got a vanilla 5 Nights and Freddy's one, which was her favorite game, but Mom made me a lemon Pikachu one. I got upset because I thought she knew that wasn't really my favorite Pokemon, and I hated lemon, but I didn't say anything because I knew she worked really hard making it. Mom said I wasn't allowed any of Alison's cake, and she wasn't allowed any of mine. Alison complained to Dad, who said she could eat whatever she liked. Alison stuffed her mouth with a piece of my cake, and when Mom tried stopping her, Dad pushed her onto the floor. He ate a piece himself and laughed at her with all this yellow frosting flying from his mouth. Alison started making these coughing sounds. Dad went to help, but then he fell to his knees and held his throat. His face got even redder than when he yelled at Mom. Mom pulled a secret Charizard, my favorite Pokemon, cake out of the fridge and carried it over to me. She said that one was chocolate orange, my favorite flavor, and she only made the lemon one because she knew Alison and Dad would want it. They were both rolling on the floor now. Mom led me outside by the hand and asked if I wanted to go on a special birthday trip without Dad or Alison. I asked where we were going, and she said it didn't matter. The important thing is that we were never coming back.
My girlfriend told me I'm not her type and I've never been so relieved. My mom's childhood bestie, Sharon, popped into the clinic while I was there giving blood. "Is that Ryan? Look how big he's getting," she said. Mom pointed at the tube in my arm, boasting about how I was a universal donor, the only interesting thing about me. Then, she invited Sharon over for dinner. Later, when I answered the door, I froze. Because Sharon brought her daughter, Ashley. Ashley had curly dark hair and pretty brown eyes. I was too nervous to speak until Mom shouted, "Don't just stand there, invite them in already." While we ate, Mom said Ashley should let me show her around town since she was new here. "I'd like that," she said, scraping all the peppers and garlic and onion off her chicken cutlets. In coastal towns gossiping is a national sport, so I knew she'd figure out what a giant loser I was eventually. A rumor circulated at school that a pale babe with a fat ass moved here, but luckily for me, she turned out to be harder to spot around town than Bigfoot. I mostly took Ashley on late-night walks, so there'd be less danger of us being noticed. She didn't speak much, but I knew she listened because she asked meaningful questions. After a few weeks, I mustered up the courage to take her to the most romantic spot I could think of, the beach. Swallowing a lump, I laced my hand with hers and then we faced each other. We leaned into each other, slowly, and just before our lips connected, I heard a voice. It was my bully, Johnny Patterson. He came rushing towards us yelling insults the entire time. Quickly, I confessed to Ashley I was social poison, that she might still have been able to salvage her reputation by saying we didn't know each other. She laughed and said she liked me too much to do that. Filled with courage, I squared up to Johnny, who caught me with a knee to the groin. From the sand, I watched him throw an arm over Ashley's shoulder, telling her she was too hot to hang out with a loser like me. The corners of Ashley's mouth curled up, revealing 2 huge fangs. Before Johnny could react, those sharp teeth clamped shut around his throat, and within seconds his body got drained of every nutritious element. Ashley tossed his withered husk into the water and then looked down at me, her face beautiful despite all the blood. She told me I didn't need to be afraid because I wasn't her type. Specifically, her blood type. According to her, O-negative, universal donor, tasted like sun-baked mayonnaise studded with cheese and diarrhea. She said she wanted us to be boyfriend-girlfriend, but would understand if I said no, and that she'd give me time to think about it. So I'm still sitting here at the beach, confused, terrified, and weirdly, excited. And now I need help figuring out what to do next.
My husband's wandering eye. My husband has always had a history of staring at other women, but it wasn't always this bad. He gawks at women every chance he gets now. What infuriates me the most is the fact that he knows about my jealous tendencies. He knows not to poke the bear. But that doesn't seem to matter anymore. He seems to have forgotten about our many drunken nights that ended in screaming fights when I would accuse him of checking out other women. Or even worse, perhaps he just didn't care anymore. All I did was look in her direction. He would plead. He insisted that I was just looking to pick a fight, but I knew better. I know what men are really after. Fortunately for me, my husband started wisening up after we got married. I would catch side glances from him every now and then, but all it took was one long rant to whip him back into shape. Until just recently. I've never seen him stare so openly before. Tonight is no different. I sit across from him at the table and watch his head turn left and right all night. He doesn't say a word. Suddenly, he gets out of his seat and walks toward the woman he's been eyeing the most this whole time. This is the first time he's actually approached someone, and I can feel my blood boil. I get out of my chair and run in front of him, desperate to stop him, but he walks straight through me and sits at the bar next to her. It is unforgivable. The wandering eye. I can put up with it. The constant ignoring. I'll deal with it. Hell, I even forgave him last month, after he stabbed me 32 times and watched me bleed out. But this was too far. We are going to have a talk tonight. My mother thinks I'm too pretty. It's bittersweet to think about the damage that would do. Mother always said that while she stripped me to the waist and whipped me. I know in my heart she was preparing me for the horrors of my future. Men, she would say, they will be your downfall. The only way she saw to make me unattractive to those devils was to scar my skin. To keep them away, as she would say. When puberty hit, then came the potato peeler. The sharp sting of the blade as it cut my skin. Every stroke with the same utterance. When I grew taller than her, she took to my legs, scraping at them in long strokes, gouging out the flesh below the skin in deep canyons until they resemble the blooded bark of aged trees. Only on Halloween did my appearance not scare people. Only then would she let me out and not worry about the lushness of man. Last week, I reveled in the event. The house was decorated. The candy was placed in a bowl at the door, and I sat next to it. The kids loved the fresh grave in the yard. I think my mother would be proud that the man turned away from my visage. Well, if she could see them, that is. It's bittersweet to think about the damage that would do. I don't have a son. I don't have a son. That's what I told the cops when they came to my door asking about Sarah Sommers. Sure, we'd have done it back in college, But I ended it after she pranked me with an "I'm pregnant" joke. She told me pretty quickly that it was all for a laugh, but it made me realize that we did not want the same thing. She would have been happy to have a baby, while I knew that raising a kid would ruin my life. The cops told me that the DNA test proved that the kid was mine. That Sarah must have already been pregnant when I broke up with her. She just hadn't known it yet. They told me about the car accident, how her son had minor injuries, but she didn't survive. They told me that there was a bunch of legal stuff to be done, and as the birth father, I needed to be there. I just nodded in shock. I had a son. I didn't see how it was possible, but they seemed sure of it. But what do the cops know? They don't know that I was aware of Sarah's pregnancy after our breakup. They don't know that the stillborn she ended up having was not actually born still. Whatever it was imitating my dead child, I knew it was after me, wanting to spill my blood the way I spilled the baby's years ago. Unfortunately for it, I don't have a son. And I'm going to keep it that way.
The Limerick. There once was a man from Peru, who dreamed he was eating his shoe. He woke with a fright, in the middle of the night, when he felt something eating him too. The man from Peru screamed in pain, as the creature bit down once again, his sheets soaked in blood. He tried all he could, at an effort to flee made in vain. With his life force draining away, the man from Peru could not pray, his arms were no more than stumps of red gore, but what God could save him anyway? I'm afraid I cannot tell a lie, there's really no hope for this guy, but maybe for you. This rhyme will get through, you really should wake up and hide.